Today we're talking about something every gardener learns the hard way. Plants you should absolutely think twice about before planting.
Yep, we've had plants that didn't quite grow how we expected and actually turned into absolute nightmares. So keep watching so that you can avoid the mistakes that we made.
Let's start with the one that still haunts me. Russian vine. It's also known as mile-a-minute vine, and believe me, it absolutely lives up to that name. At our last house, our neighbours planted it, and before we knew it, it had leapt over the fence and completely smothered our beautiful lilac tree.
Still gives me shivers to this very day.
I know. We constantly tried to stop it, climbing onto the fence and try and pull it back, but it was so fast and aggressive that we just couldn't save the tree. I was honestly so shocked when I saw it for sale in the garden centre. Those delicate white flowers might look innocent, but don't be fooled. Avoid this plant at all costs.
Another one that keeps me awake at night is bamboo. It's often used as an attractive evergreen screen, and I will admit, it does look fantastic in the right setting. It kind of adds a nice modern architectural feel to a garden, doesn't it?
It really does. It can be a lovely feature, but only in the right garden.
Yeah, and once it's in the ground, it doesn't stay where you put it. We had it in our last garden, and even when we thought we'd removed it, new shoots kept popping up everywhere for years. Now we've inherited it again in this garden.
If you are set on using bamboo, always go for the clumping varieties. They grow in tight clusters and don't spread with runners, and so they're much easier to control.
Now, Clematis montana is another one to be cautious with. We do love it and are relatively happy to have it in our front garden here. When it's in full bloom, it's just absolutely stunning. But it will spread and attach itself to absolutely everything it meets along the way.
It will take over if you let it. It sends out fast-growing vines and will happily latch onto anything nearby. Trees, sheds, other climbers, other plants, you name it. In the past, we've tried to keep ours well pruned, and we're always watching the surrounding plants like hawks. It's a beauty, but it definitely needs boundaries. As you can see, we haven't had a chance to tackle this one yet.
And speaking of climbers, English ivy might look charming trailing over old stone walls and fences. What English country garden would be complete without it, right?
Really adds charm and character. And on our last garden, we had it growing around the boundary wall. It gave the space a really lovely soft green backdrop.
But let it near the house and it could be trouble. Can damage brickwork and render. Plus, it's incredibly hard to get rid of once it's established. So it was growing all over our pizza oven over there, and getting it all off without bringing the wall with it was a real challenge.
I like to enjoy it from afar, but I wouldn't let it anywhere near the house. Next up is a plant that looks delicate and charming, Japanese anemones. They're really beautiful with their soft papery flowers in shades of pink or white that bloom in late summer and carry on right into autumn. Pollinators absolutely love them, but don't let their dainty appearances fool you. They are serious spreaders. These plants can multiply underground through runners, and once they take hold, they can take over a whole bed. If you've got a large garden and you don't mind them forming big flowering clumps, they can work beautifully. But in a smaller garden, they're likely to take over and leave you with very little space for anything else. They'll happily outcompete more well-behaved plants, and getting rid of them completely can be a real challenge once they're established. So, if you're prepared to be really firm with them, or you've got a spot where they can roam freely, I'd think twice before planting Japanese anemones.
One plant we found absolutely everywhere in this garden is Bistorta. And at first we weren't entirely sure what it was. It just looked like a massive leafy green growth popping up all over the place. But once it flowered, we were finally able to identify it. These distinctive pinkish flowers give it away. It turns out Bistorta spreads both by rhizomes underground and by seed, which kind of definitely explains how it's managed to get into every corner of the garden so quickly. Now, to be fair, it's not the most aggressive or destructive invasive plant out there. It's fairly easy to pull up when the ground is soft, and it doesn't seem to be choking out everything around it. Plus, the pollinators do seem to absolutely love it. So we are allowing a few patches to stay, especially in areas where we want to encourage wildlife. That said, we're not completely in love with how it looks, and we don't want it taking over. so we're planning to manage it by cutting it back regularly and keeping an eye on where it's spreading. Next up is Leyland cypress, often used for hedging because it grows incredibly fast, which sounds great in theory if you want privacy or a quick boundary, but in practice it can become a real problem. It shoots up at an alarming rate and creates a wall of dense, dark greenery that blocks out sunlight completely. That heavy shade makes it really difficult for anything else to grow nearby, and it can leave the surrounding area feeling gloomy and lifeless.
And the speed of its growth means you'll really have to stay on top of trimming your bush. Once it gets tall, it's an absolute nightmare to maintain. If you leave it even for a year or two, it becomes a towering green monster on your hands. So, unless you're ready to maintain it regularly, or you genuinely want to block out your neighbours and never see them again, it might be worth considering a slower growing, lower maintenance alternative, like Western red cedar, which looks similar to Leyland cypress, but grows at a much more manageable pace.
So, what about ground covers, like periwinkles for example? That are often recommended for tricky spots, especially under trees or in shady corners.
Ah yes, but don't mix up your periwinkles. There's a big difference between Vinca minor and Vinca major, and it's important to know which one you're planting.
Yeah, so it seems like one of them behaves and the other one most definitely doesn't.
Vinca minor, or lesser periwinkle, is usually the better choice for most gardeners. It's a fast-spreading evergreen ground cover with lovely little purple flowers, but it stays quite low to the ground and grows at a much more manageable pace. It's great for borders and shrubs and in shady areas where other plants might struggle. But its aggressive cousin, Vinca major, the greater periwinkle, is a whole different story. It grows larger, spreads much faster, and can quickly become a problem. It sends out long trailing stems that root wherever they touch the ground, which makes it really hard to contain once it gets going. So, stick to Vinca minor.
Even strawberries can be one to watch. They're often recommended for beginner gardeners, and for good reason. They're easy to grow, they don't need much space, and the taste of homegrown strawberries is unbeatable. But they do come with a warning. So when we moved here, we found this raised bed absolutely bursting with them. They're completely taken over.
They're so sneaky, aren't they?
Very. So strawberries send out runners, those long stems that creep along the surface of the soil and form new baby plants wherever they land. If you're not keeping an eye on them, they'll spread far and wide in no time. So we always recommend growing them in containers or hanging baskets where you can easily control the spread. And even then, keep an eye out. They'll sometimes send runners right into neighbouring pots where you're not looking.
Mint is another one to be really careful with. We absolutely love it. It's one of those plants that just makes your whole garden smell amazing, and all you have to do is brush past it and the scent hits you. It's fantastic in drinks and cooking. Who doesn't love a mojito, right?
Absolutely, I certainly do. And there are tons of varieties, and this one is lemon mint. It smells absolutely gorgeous.
Exactly. Most people just think of the standard spearmint or peppermint, but there's a whole world of mint out there. It's so easy to fall in love with them. I'm actually tempted to do a whole video on mint, to be honest.
But if you plant any of them directly in the ground, you're asking for trouble.
Mint spreads underground via rhizomes and doesn't respect boundaries. Once it's in, it's really hard to get out again. That's why we always recommend growing mint in containers. And if you do want to grow it in a bed, you could sink it into a pot into the ground to keep the roots contained. But honestly, keeping it in a pot on a patio is the safest option. That way you can enjoy all the amazing varieties and keep it close to the kitchen.
And one more to watch out for from the kitchen garden, Jerusalem artichoke. It's actually a relative of the sunflower, and you can see the family resemblance when it flowers. Tall stems with bright yellow blooms that can add a lovely splash of colour to a raised bed or veg patch.
But here's the catch. Lurking underground, it's the edible tubers that are the problem. The edible part grows underground, and once those tubers are in the soil, they multiply like mad. You might dig them up and think you've got them all, but even if you leave a tiny piece behind, they'll regrow. We've heard so many stories of people still digging up Jerusalem artichokes years after planting only a handful.
Yeah, seems to be one of those plant once, harvest forever situations, whether you like it or not.
And a cautionary tale about Spanish bluebells. We planted some in our old garden, not realising at the time that they're actually a threat to our beautiful native English bluebells. They look lovely and I had no idea there was a difference, or that planting them could cause a problem.
Exactly, and now in our new garden we've inherited a load of bluebells, and I've been having a bit of a closer look, and from what I can tell, most of them are Spanish bluebells, with a few English ones scattered around. Now, interestingly, I've noticed that the English ones seem to last longer in bloom, and they have that delicate, lovely scent. The Spanish ones don't really smell of anything.
They also crossbreed really easily with the native English bluebells, creating hybrids that dilute the gene pool and threaten the long-term survival of our native species. And to make matters worse, they spread like wildfire and are incredibly difficult to remove once established. So, if you're in the UK and thinking of planting bluebells, definitely choose the native English variety. You'll be doing your bit for the local biodiversity and helping protect something really special.
So there you have it. Some of the plants we've learned to watch out for over the years. They might well be beautiful, delicious, or even great for pollinators, but they all come with a bitter baggage.
Have you had any of your own garden bullies? Let us know in the comments, especially if there's anything that we should avoid planting in our new garden.
Yep, we're always learning, and your stories might save someone else a lot of digging later on. Watch this video next to learn how to make free fertiliser from the weeds in your garden.